And watch this wonderful traditional display entrance by one of our traditional dancers. Traditionally here in Ghana, when we are receiving dignitaries and receiving our traditional Nime and Name, we welcome them with drums.
Check 1T, 1T. Yeah. Check mic 1T.
Can we please give a big round of applause to our traditional dancer, Mansa, who is giving us a beautiful
Check 1T.
display of our traditional dance here in Ghana.
Check 1T. Yeah.
Through into the auditorium. Some people are getting their registration tags, some are having coffee, tea. So I'll indulge your patience to give them a few more minutes to get settled before we begin the morning. Thank you so much. Hello. Good morning once again. First and foremost, on behalf of the Global Landscapes Forum for Accra, Ghana here today, I'd like to say a big welcome to all of you participants, all you speakers, media houses, Nime and Name. Thank you so very much once again for joining us this morning. It's a really great opportunity to have your presence here. I'd like to say a big thank you again. In the next 5 minutes, we will be shutting the doors and beginning the ceremony for the morning. Thank you. On behalf of the Global Landscapes Forum here in Accra, Ghana, I'd like to welcome you all here, those of you that are here with us present, and those of you that are joining us online across the world. Thank you very much for being present with us here this morning. Every day we hear about the problems that the earth faces. from famine to disease to war, and the list doesn't end there. Every year, roughly 13 million hectares of land are deforested. Now, for some of you that want to imagine what that looks like, close your eyes for just 5 seconds. Please indulge with me and close your eyes for 5 seconds. And imagine this entire city of Accra without trees. That is what deforestation looks like. Landscapes that have been deprived of their natural fauna and flora. Species that are being deprived of their natural habitat. That is what deforestation means, and degradation of that land as well. How will the function if we continue to deprive it of its natural resources that sustains our life and our livelihood? Well, the answer is we can begin to change our habits, change our narrative, and change the narrative from the beginning, from the ground up. Essentially, the idea behind land restoration, sometimes referred to as forest landscape restoration, is what it is that we're here to discuss today. Well-being in deforested and degraded forest landscapes. The idea is not just about planting new trees and changing your habits from walking from the office to home. It's about making a global change, a collective change. As we look towards the decade on ecosystem restoration, now is a critical time to share knowledge, create new thinking, and identify and scale innovative solutions for landscape restoration that is inclusive and ensures the rights of all stakeholders. Today, we will begin with an energizing session that aims to inspire participants, you participants, foster networking and relationship building, and gather ideas and valuable inputs on the needs of the global landscape community during this critical decade. We will begin this morning with 4 catalyst speakers who will speak to us about restoration, the economy, policies. We'll hear from the youth. We will see the youth represented here this morning as we've seen here or to far corner left. Please stand up and let us see you representing the youth over here. Thank you. Our speakers are made up of, as I mentioned, economists, policymakers, change makers, and decision makers as well. Opinion leaders, not to mention a few. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my very first speaker for this morning, who comes from my very own country, Nana Ama Yira, to start the speech this morning. Thank you for welcoming her this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And good morning to you all, dear participants. It's an honor to be here this morning to start off this program. As you may all be aware, as you were preparing for this program and you had all the invitations and the supporting documents, I'm sure you saw that important aspects of the discussion today and tomorrow will be about rights. Yes, rights. Whose rights? What rights? And why is it such an important matter to discuss when we are looking at landscapes restoration? It is because the restoration agenda is a commitment. Would you agree with me that it is a commitment? Yes, it's a commitment from the country level to the individual level, and actually a community commitment. Commitment to do or refrain from doing certain actions that would cause a problem for the ecosystem, or a commitment to act in a way that will restore our landscapes. And therefore, dear participants, you would agree with me that if we did not give attention to rights, to define whose rights and what rights, We may be doing all that we need to do, but we will fail to have people act in the right way to give commitment to the agenda to restore our landscapes. So I'm here this morning to excite you so that as you think about landscapes restoration, you look at it also from the aspect of rights for individuals, for communities, and for countries, so that we will be able to motivate them enough to take those actions that are needed to restore our landscapes. And to excite you, I just want to share with you an example of how this happened in one project we worked on. And by the way, as Michelle mentioned, I'm from Ghana, and I work as the director and founder of an organization called COLANDEF. COLANDEF is a land rights organization. We facilitate processes at the community level to ensure that community land rights, individual land rights are secured. So sometime in 2010 thereabouts, there is this community that existed around a very famous forest. Go near the forest reserve so that it will not harm the forest. But what happened? He is not an indigene of the area. He is not the owner of the land. He doesn't have what we call the absolute right to be able to take such decisions for himself and even to encourage others or advise them to refrain from certain actions. So he had no right to do it. He had no right to take that decision. And so he approached a group. What can I do so that I can advocate to protect the forest? And that is how come we came into contact. In the end, what resulted in the conversation was that we were able to help him to engage and dialogue with the traditional leaders of the area so that whatever type of land rights that they were occupying were documented, defined, so that it explained what type of arrangement, what type of permission he has to be able to act. And in the end, he was able to protect himself. He was able to help other people to ensure that at least when they don't clear the land unduly, they can still be sure that the land will still lie there and their rights will be protected. Apart from that, we all talk about the fact that restoration brings benefits. So when we fight to restore our landscapes, it has some benefits in it. But who gets those benefits? Whose right is it to access those benefits? That is another important discussion. Because in any case, if I am not going to be part of the benefits, would I be committed? Definitely not. And if I don't have any space within which this right I have, this right to access benefits, if there is no space to discuss it, to secure it, would I be able to commit myself to do it? Definitely not. So the question about benefit sharing, the question about decisions to act, and decisions to cause others to act are all founded on the rights. And therefore, as we are here for the 2 days to discuss landscapes restoration, dear participants, let us all make it a point that we bring our experiences to bear to illustrate why it's important for us as practitioners to focus also on the rights. Rights to take the decisions, rights to access the benefits so that the people we expect to act will actually be committed to act. And that way, we can be sure that we'll be pushing the restoration agenda to the level that we really need to take it. So I encourage you all that you follow me to the next session where we will explore more on this exciting subject of rights. Thank you.
Now that is how we are beginning this morning's session with very inspiring, energizing, and very real comments about what's happening on the ground. Now, today is not just about sitting here and listening to long speeches. It's about participating, it's about collaborating and sharing your ideas. So in the next session during the course of the morning, we will invite you, just like Nanama also mentioned, to this breakout sessions that will be mentioned at some point during the course of the morning on these screens. So at this point in time, I would like to welcome our very second catalyst speaker, who is by no other name by Mr. Horst Friedberg. He is a restoration expert. Please help me welcome him on stage. Mr. Friedberg is a restoration expert who is a forester by training and considered to be the father of Bond Challenge. Please come and welcome me here.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle, for that very nice introduction and a warm welcome to all of you here in the morning. I have 5 minutes to explain you something about the decade on ecosystem restoration, which is a fantastic, I think, instrument which may really provide us the real necessary changes for the next 10 years when the decade starts, 21 to 2030. It was, for me, surprising when I was assisting, Michelle explained to you I was involved in the Bond Challenge, and when the first time at the third international meeting of the Bond Challenge in Brazil, the government of El Salvador proposed that idea on a restoration decade in March 2018, it took only 1 year that this decade was agreed and adopted by the UN General Assembly this March. It shows how high a need the expectation are on ecosystem restoration, which means restoration of ecosystem services in the ground. And it is what I think 21 to 2030, there are so many international goals starting and happening, like the SDGs, which is a decisive time frame, really, to do something. And the decade, if you look into the text, is something which is amazing, that conservation is part of the restoration ecosystem. So the UN combined both things, and which means conserve, protect, wisely manage our remaining resources and restore what we have lost. In my view, the decade is a proof on if we mean what we say and if we act on what we have decided so far. I think this is important. And as well, if we really stop and restore or regain loss of biodiversity, if we really stop and global heating, and if we really stop soil and land degradation to save our livelihoods. I think this is a core objective of that decade. And I think the Fridays for Future youth movement, I do hope that they see that decade as their decade and that they participate and join and support the implementation of that decade. It is a global movement, and I think the decade has to become as well a movement, a global movement. But still it is on paper. And paper, of course, is something which you can write and say, look, I put it into somewhere and it is somewhere guided, but hide it somewhere. But you need to give a paper a face. You need to give a paper something which makes it, well, worth to work with it and provide an anchor. Yeah, thank you. So, and I would like to share with you an idea which I have on how the decade for the African region could, well, at least one possibility could have a face in doing or in implementing a restoration, ecosystem restoration initiative which shares, lets people learn, and also lets people act together on something based on the wonderful Great Green Wall initiative. I added a line according to Neil Malawi Okavango Greenbelt. I called it like this because it's going down to the great fly routes of migrating birds, but also to rivers. It's the Eye of Africa, which combines along the Victoria Sea Lake, all the countries, and according to the West Coast, the Western African Coast Greenbelt and the Northern African Coast Greenbelt, which symbolizes only something where people can work with, but all those who live in between can work together, share together, connect together, and act together in order to benefit from it or contribute to this. So thank you. This was my introduction on the decade, and I hope you get inspired to join also my group on the decade, how the decade could really become a living instrument for the future, because I think the next decades is really a proof for us if we definitely are doing what we have decided so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Horst. I was trying to actually make my way into the auditorium because I feel that sometimes when we're on this stage, it becomes more inhumane because you're not able to actually sort of see and feel and sense the sense of reality that's actually happening to the planet. Now, most of you have noticed that our weather patterns have changed, is that right? Can I see hands up by those who have witnessed that the weather patterns have changed? How many of you have encountered floods in your country? How many of you have encountered drought? So it's real. The explanations from scientists, from policymakers, from economists, from even advocates and speakers that are going across the world like Greta Thunberg, who is one of the most active, vocal people, young ladies who speaking about climate change, is real. And so most of these speeches that we come to are meant to incite a reality check. They are meant to tell us that we have to wake up and shake up from our habits and change them once and for all. So I would not like to bore you any further, but at some point I would like to sort of bring the reality back home about the fact that it's not just about just listening to these speeches, it's about making some changes even in your backyard or in your kitchen or in your living room by turning your ACs off, by putting, opening up your windows. It's about making small changes and not just being observants or spectators. We have to participate together in making a collective change. I'd like to invite at this point in time my next catalyst speaker, who's a lovely lady. Her name is Silham Drissi. Please give her a big round of applause and welcome her on stage. Silham, where are you coming from? Which country are you from?
Morocco.
Morocco. How many Moroccans do we have in the country, in the city today of Accra? No other Moroccan? How many French-speaking people do we have here today? Les ceux qui parlent français, vous êtes pas beaucoup quand même. Il y a un peu plus? Ok, d'accord. Pour vous qui parlent français, qui n'entendent pas vraiment en anglais, on va traduire ça en français, mais vous pouvez mettre votre headset pour écouter ça en français. So Silham, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. All right. So let's talk about gender. A very important subject that you're all passionate about, I'm sure. So historically, most rural lands were customarily owned and governed by the indigenous peoples and local communities. Up to 2.5 billion people still live in community arrangements and directly manage over 50% of global land. Women within these communities play an outsized role in both feeding their families and protecting the resources all humanity depends on. Women's crucial roles as forest, land, household managers, food providers, and leaders of rural enterprises is too often ignored. The land rights of indigenous and community women remain constrained by unjust laws and practices, and these women are often locked out of decision-making processes. As a friend of mine told me once, when you are not at the table, you're on the menu. Securing women's rights to participate in community-level governance through voting and leadership is vital to achieve global sustainable development and climate justice. Women and girls are disproportionately affected by environmental degradation. When we talk about processes like land restoration efforts, we must ensure the participation of the women living in these lands. We need to ensure they have equal rights to access land and natural resources, but also markets, capitals, knowledge and training, for example, information and technologies. In these both will make sure for conservation and restoration programs to succeed and make sure benefits are equitable. In line with this, the African Union gender equality commitments focus on achieving 30% documented ownership and 50% finance for women. These are prerequisites to reach the Malabo commitments. During this GLF sessions, you will have different sessions regarding gender. You will have, for example, a very interesting consultation on the network of African women environmentalists. During this consultation, we will discuss, among other things, how to tap into traditional and local knowledge and expertise to actually provide contextual solutions. We will also have a workshop on the GLF gender constituency and the importance of women networking in order to, most of all, have the ownership of the narrative also. And then finally, there will be also a plenary on gender, also related to gender, on African women in sustainable business and environmental management. In conclusion, gender equality is basically a must to tackle food security, nutrition, rural poverty, and also to provide integrated approaches for adaptation and mitigation of climate change, and to support our development goals. Now, I would like to finish this presentation with a quote from the Professor Wangari Maathai that says, "Today we are faced with a challenge that calls for a shift in our thinking so that humanity stops threatening its life support system. We are all called to assist the earth to heal her wounds and in the process heal our own. Indeed, to embrace the whole of creation in all its diversity, beauty, and wonder. Recognizing that sustainable development, democracy, and peace are indivisible is an idea whose time has come." As you know, Professor Wangari Maathai was from Kenya. In Kiswahili, there is a word for together, because there is only one way we will make it, is to do it together, make it happen together. This word in Kiswahili is umoja, together. Now please, welcome these young gentlemen and young ladies to make the promise with you that we will do it together. Please.
Can we please give them a big round of applause as we have them grace this stage, and let us help sing with them Umoja. Umoja. Umoja.
Umoja. Umoja. Umoja. Umoja. Umoja. Muzizai. 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 C for C. C for C. C for C. C for C. C. When do you want it? 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 C for C. C for C. We go, we go. 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 We go.
Encourage them by giving them a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
When do you want? What do you want? When do you want it? When do you want it? When do you want it?
Atiwa. 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 Dodowa. Dodowa.
Wow.
Really?
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you can give these young, I call them solution ambassadors, a big round of applause for making us wake up this morning. Another big round of applause. Thank you, ladies and young gentlemen. Thank you so much. Watch your step as you're going down. As we witness across the world, the youth are changing the narrative. The youth are making their voices heard. And I think that as adults, it's our responsibility to listen and to act, because really the time is now. It's not tomorrow. It's not next week. It's right now. And so the purpose of this gathering today is to have all of you participants, volunteers, stakeholders, to also make your contribution online and here live in Accra, Ghana. For some who want to have access to our internet portal, the Wi-Fi code is Think Landscapes. So if you kindly go onto your telephones, if you want to have access to the internet, I believe it's Think Landscapes. So please feel free to use and have access to free internet to tweet as much as you would like to and make your contribution and your voices and your words heard. Now, without further ado, I'd like to call on my very last Catalyst speaker. His name is John Mary Kavuna. Please give a big round of applause for John Mary Kavuna. Now, I noticed this young gentleman because one of the things, please let's give him one big round of applause. Another one, maybe. They say that we always reserve the best for last. But every single speaker that we have had here, thank you so very much for your contributions and for giving us such awareness this morning. Now, I'd like to sort of change the format a little bit and ask you a few questions about what it is that you have done in your country, Uganda. He's from Uganda, by the way. Another Ugandan? Maybe one more? Tell us what you do exactly, John Mary, before you begin your speech.
I'm an environmentalist and really passionate about uplifting the lives of marginalized groups of people, as well as saving the environment.
I think he deserves a big round of applause for that. And one of the things that John Mary does in his country is that he constructs buildings out of recycled plastic bottles. Now, there are lots of things that we can do with biodegradable products as well by keeping the environment clean and safe for the next generation. So, without further ado, John Mary, the stage is yours.
I am very happy to be here today to share with you what I do and my own experience. So, we have been on the surface of the planet Earth for less than 1% of its history, but we've caused massive destruction and untold damages to its geology and natural environment. In fact, we've been on the surface of the planet Earth for less than 1% of its history. So UN warns that we have less than 12 years to stop climate catastrophe. On the other side, it also warns us that we have, by 2050, we're going to be losing 1 million species of plants and animals. That is significant. So on the other side, we are producing and having more plastic. So by 2050, we are going to be having more plastic in the ocean than fish. So I myself, I was born in Uganda and grew up as a poor orphan without access to good housing. Rain at night meant the end of sleep to my grandmother and me. When I was 19 years old, our house collapsed because it was too old and badly built. I only survived with huge wounds on my arm and some wounds on the head as well. However, my only beloved grandmother died from the injuries she suffered. But the pain of my loss became my inspiration to start a new form of housing or construction. So I got an opportunity to join Social Innovation Academy in Uganda, which empowers marginalized groups of people to start their own businesses. So through their empowerment, I was able to start Upcycle Africa together with my team. So the Upcycle Africa projects protect the environment and promotes innovative mindset while empowering youths. So plastic bottles are collected and compacted with soil to make bricks. This makes our houses cost-effective and affordable. They are durable, they buffer heat, and they are earthquake resistant. We have so far constructed 117 houses in different parts of Africa. So Upcycle Africa has created direct jobs to 278 women who serve on contracts as waste pickers, sorters, and constructors. These cash incentives has ensured economic empowerment for these youths and allows low-income families to support their children with the school fees. The Waste Pickers program recovers plastic waste in beaches, streets, and bus stations, ensuring clean and safe environment. So our school recycling project recovers plastic waste from 50 schools monthly while educating students on good waste management practices. Within 5 years, we will have trained 10,000 marginalized youths as waste collectors, sorters, and constructors. So due to high demand of our services and our products, we hope to employ 600 youths in the process. So because by building houses from plastic bottles, we are empowering disadvantaged groups in the cause of environmental conservation. So I consider all the tragedies in my life to have been gifts to empower me to make difference in other people's lives. My life has been a journey with so many thorns, but I made friendship with those thorns, and my life became beautiful, so that I can be able to give beauty to so many other people. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, John Mary. Now, I'm so impressed about what you've done, and I think that you should probably come to Ghana and give some kind of vocational training to some of our youth as well. What do people think?
Next month I'm in Nigeria.
Next month he's going to Nigeria.
Construct a school for young people, young kids.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much. But I'd like you to stay here on stage with me because at this point in time, I'd like to call all my other speakers to also join me on stage. so that our participants and also the audience can see you once again. So can you come to this side here for me? Let's please welcome them on stage with a big round of applause, please. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've heard from our catalyst speakers this morning who have given us their, please have a seat. Thank you very much and be comfortable. Thank you. We've heard from our catalyst speakers from across the African continent. Some of them are from Uganda, from Morocco, from here, Ghana, and other Pan-African presence here with us this morning. The reason why I've asked them to come back on stage is because at this point in time, we will be having our breakout sessions. For some of you that would like to actually have a conversation and a group session with these catalyst speakers, I'd like you to take a real good look at them once more, because some of them will be going to specific areas within the auditorium and also outside of the entire space of the conference center. So I'm sure at this point in time you'll be having on the screens, and then if not, I'd like to also mention to you where they will be going. We've heard from Rights, and that was from Nana Mayura. Please give her another big round of applause. We've also heard from Mr. Horst Friedberg, who's given us his speech about the UN decade, the era of the UN decade. Please give him a big round of applause as well. Thank you. We've heard from Silham Juisi, who spoke to us about gender, and she brought on stage the young youth solution ambassadors who told us about Umoja, collectiveness, about being one, that there is strength in numbers. Please give her another big round of applause. And last but not the least, we've also heard from John Mary from Uganda, who's building homes from recycled bottles. Once more, please give them all a big round of applause for me. So as I mentioned earlier on, there will be breakout sessions, and some of the breakout sessions will be taking place as follows. If you would like to speak to Madame Nana Mayura, who's speaking to us about rights this morning, you'll be going to the consultation room, which is in Pavilion. The consultation pavilion, I beg your pardon. We will also have ushers and hostesses outside who are right behind there. The ladies are dressed in black. They'll be ushering you to the appropriate breakout session rooms. If you want to also speak to Mr. Horst Friedberg from the UN about UN decade, networking areas where you can find him. If you would like to speak to Silham Juisi on gender, she will be in the committee hall. And last but not least, the youth will be staying here with us until we come back after our coffee break. So at this point in time, once again, I'd like to say thank you very much for being patient and for being on time. We can have a coffee break outside. We will please ask that everyone comes back after the breakout sessions at exactly 11:45 for the second session of the morning. So once again, my name is Michelle Atto. I'm your hostess and your moderator for the morning. Thank you and see you at 11:45.